Welcome back to Movies to be Murdered By. And you're with me, Jessie Drew, and we are also with Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, how are you this evening?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to break down this movie that we watched this week.
Yeah, me too. So for all of you guys listening, Jeff got to do our weekly pick. So we are talking about Green Room, the movie released in April of 2016 and directed by Jeremy Saulnier. I think that's how you pronounce the name. Do you
I
know,
think
Jeff?
so. I think so. I think that's
Jeremy
it.
Saulnier. And it's starring the deceased and very much lovable Anton Yelkin. Yelchin or Yelkin? I've never known. I'm so bad with names, so forgive
That's
me.
okay.
Aaliyah Shawkat, Imogene Poots, a bunch of people. And, last but of course not least, Patrick Stewart graces this movie with his presence.
Yes.
And it's all the better for it. It was all right. I'm gonna let you say a little bit about it since this was your choice. Why did you? I know you gave me a few movies to choose from. This was one of the
Yes.
options, and this was the one that I picked. But these were all of your choices. So why Green Room?
So when I first watched Green Room, going into it, I really didn't know what to think. I like movies. Well, first, I like all types of music. So I was interested to see, this punk rock band in this movie and seeing the trailer and, reading the tagline, and it says, a punk rock band is forced to fight for survival after witnessing a murder at a neo-Nazi skinhead bar. And for whatever reason, I was like, okay, that's something I really have to check out. I don't know why, but I said I really got to check it out. And when I did, I was pleasantly surprised because, I thought it was just going to be just kind of over the top violence without much of a story behind it. And once I watched it and got the story and saw all of the character development and some of the other things in the film, that really, I mean, it was just such a great watch for me. And and when you told me you hadn't watched it, I said, okay, I got to throw this one into the mix just to see if you would pick this one. But yeah, I felt like not only the description of the film, but then I looked at all of the actors that were in the film before watching it, and I said, okay, I feel like this is going to be a really, really strong movie, and it didn't disappoint. So that's why I chose it. I really, really enjoyed it, and upon my first watch, I was shocked. Um, there is a lot of violence in the movie, and we were talking off air about this, but I really feel like the subject matter and the people in the movie and the fact that you have neo-Nazi skinheads and you've got this punk rock band, I kind of felt like the violence in the film fit because you're in this grungy, kind of underground setting throughout the movie, and it just really, it felt real in terms of the violence, and that's what I really that's what really stood out to me about the movie. So I'm gonna flip this question: out of the movies that I sent you, why Green Room? Why did you choose to go with this one?
Green Room has definitely had my attention since it was released.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the idea of a punk rock horror movie. Also, like you had said, that's something that kind of captured your mind. And Patrick Stewart being in it, Aaliyah Shawkat being in it. Although for some reason I remembered it being Ellen Page, the girl from Juno. Like for some reason I had it in my mind, like, oh yeah, that's the one that Ellen Page is in. But I forgot. But anyway, I thought the same thing about that being kind of an interesting cross, you know, of a punk rock horror movie that seemed legit. So yeah, so I looked. You sent me you gave me 3 movies to look up,
Right.
and honestly, this one seems like I just would like it. That was just my gut feeling, especially since I had remembered it since it came out in 2016, and I had never gotten a chance to watch it. I had wondered if it was as good as I thought it could be, and I'm glad that it was. You know, it was. It definitely did not. It wasn't. It was not a disappointment. It was. I think it was a good movie. I think that I noticed it had a high approval rating. I'm gonna keep going back to these ratings. I know I keep talking about how they don't matter, but I guess they kind of do matter to me in some weird way. I feel like maybe it's just like a litmus test, like, you know, like yay or nay, you know. But I think it deserves the high approval rating. I thought it was interesting. I mean, I know that it was released through A24, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not a tiny company, but it's not, you know, a big company either. But I was kind of surprised when I was looking it up that it did not make its budget back at the box office.
Yeah, I was shocked by that.
Me too. I thought it had done a lot better than that. I thought it at least made its money back, because I would have just guessed like, oh yeah, I'm sure that movie did pretty well. It was an interesting concept, and their movies like are usually sleepy hits, but they usually are. And I don't know. I was just really surprised, especially Patrick Stewart's in it. You know, love Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, I was surprised as well that it didn't make it back, and you know, hopefully, maybe it's one of those films that, and this is going to sound a little strange, but there are just some movies out there that don't do well in theaters, but once you can get it in your home and watch it, and sometimes watch it 2 or 3 times, it's like, okay, this is an awesome movie, so I need to.
Right.
So I think that might be the case with this one, and I also think the subject matter as well, with not neo-Nazi skinheads. I think that might have been maybe a deterrent for some people, because, you know, if you just look at it on its face, you don't really know what it's about, and you're thinking, well, you know, are the neo-Nazis going to be the ones killing people? You know, how is this going to play out? So I just think that, you know, some movies better, you know, more so than others, play better in a theater, and some just play better at home. It's not saying that it shouldn't be in a theater, because it absolutely should be, but you know, I just think that some movies just tend to work a little bit better once you can watch them in the comfort of your own home, or, you know, with friends, you know, in a more intimate setting than being in a movie theater.
Yeah, this certainly would be one of those movies. You're right. And you can, and this is definitely, and yeah, I didn't think about that. What had turned me off to the movie upon its release initially was the level of violence, but of this specific type of violence of, like, you know, you're trapped and you're not going anywhere type of violence. And that's really terrifying. And you're right, the fact that the antagonists were, like, you know, neo-Nazis probably could have been a turnoff to a good amount of people.
Right. Yeah.
So do you want to give us a synopsis about Green Room?
Yes, I will.
Great.
I won't do a huge synopsis, because I do, if people haven't watched it, I definitely want people to go watch it. But essentially, we open up the movie with a band that, and I believe they're called the Ain't Rights. They you see them on the road, and you can kind of tell that they are just starting out. They're not a well-known band. They're traveling in this old school van, And, you get the sense that they're really good friends and they enjoy their music and they're trying to make a name for themselves. So they meet up with this guy, and, he's doing an interview with them, and there's a show that kind of falls through, but he ends up taking them to some restaurant, which was ridiculous. um, and they finish up the gig and they get paid, and I think it was like $6 and some change that each of them got for doing that gig, and they were all kind of ticked off, and rightfully so. So then this guy says, hey, my cousin, there's this place, and he's there, and I feel like you could do pretty well there. And so off they go, because they're trying to get their name out, and this is going to pay a little bit more money than the $6 that they just got. So off they go, and they get to this. I don't know how to really describe it other than like a compound, basically, where all of these neo-Nazi skinheads are there, and they're kind of, in a mosh pit, so to speak, and, kind of headbanging and there for some music. And, they get up and they play their first song, and the crowd is not feeling it at all. And then they start into the rest of their set, and you automatically see them connect with the audience. So, they play some good stuff, and, you see some little things in the background going on, and, you see this, you see the cousin, I believe his name was Daniel, giving some drugs to another girl, and Imogene Poots, her character, was right there. And, you see them do that, and then, off they go. And then they finish their set. They go back up to get their stuff, and all of it's been cleared out at this point. And, when one of the characters says, hey, I left my phone in the dressing room, essentially. And Anton Yelchin's character says, okay, well, I'll get it for you. So he goes back in the room, and we see the girl that got the drugs with a knife in her head laying on the floor. And, it's like, oh, crap, what in the world is going on? And you see Imogene Poots, her character, standing there. She's shell-shocked. And Anton, and I believe his character's name was Pat, he's just like, listen, I'm just here to get a phone. I don't see anything. I didn't see anything. So he's trying to get out of there. And then all of a sudden, for lack of a better term, all hell breaks loose. And, at this point, the band is forced back into the room, and, Pat in the movie, he calls 911, and then he hangs up, and they call right back. So now you've got all of these neo-Nazi skinheads trying to cover all this up and cover their tracks and figure out what to do. So then they start hatching a plan of what to do and how to divert the police from what they're doing with this band, and holding this band at this point essentially hostage. And the way that the movie plays out from there, it's, these bad guys are holding this band, and the band is trying to find ways out. There's one of the skinheads is in the room, and I forget which character it was, but he puts them in an arm bar, and, just to try to get control of them. And, they try to work everything out and figure out if they can get out of here. And they find out really soon that they won't make it out in one piece. And for me, there are a lot of graphic scenes in the movie, but for me, one of the most graphic scenes that I've seen probably is when Pat is asked to hand over the gun.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, well, I really don't want to do it. I'll give you the gun, but we're going to keep the ammunition, and blah, blah, blah. So, they're trying to do this exchange, and you realize at the last minute that, it's not just Patrick Stewart's character out there. There are others out there, and what they do to Pat's hand and arm, if you haven't seen it, just watch it.
Sit tight.
Yeah, but it was, I'll say this, the effects on that were amazing.
Excellent.
Because I mean, let's just say that his arm and hand got hacked up pretty well, and the way that it was shot and the effect of how it was done was just brilliant. And then you just, you see what these neo-Nazis are willing to do to cover this up and make it look like the band was just intruding. And I mean, we see everything from knives and guns to dogs, very well trained dogs. And it's just like this roller coaster of violence, and the plot starts to really unfold, and you get some deeper character work and those things. So again, I don't want to spoil it too much, because I definitely would like people to go watch it if they haven't. But I really enjoyed the way that it was done. I really like the ending of it, because we were, like you were talking about before we started recording, it gave off a realistic vibe at the end, because for the most part there are a couple good people in this movie, but there are not a lot of great people in this film.
No.
And you find yourself at parts of the film, especially with some of the brutality, you're like, well, that jerk deserved it. So I'm not going to turn away from it. They deserve this, violence, and maybe even a little bit more. But I really thought that the ending of the film was done well. And, I can't say anything bad about it. I really thought it was a great film. I felt like once things got going, once they were locked up in the room, and you see the reveal of this dead body on the floor, it felt like from that point on the movie just flew by. Once we were in the van and doing some of the things early, it was kind of like, okay, well, it's kind of, I don't want to say dragging, but they were developing this story. But once all of that took place, I felt like it just, it was just on a fast track from there on. So that's my synopsis of it. So so Jessie, give me your thoughts upon your first watch of the film and what you thought.
Well, what I liked about the film to start off with is that you do feel like you get right into a story. There's some setup, but it's not terrible, and it's not too long.
Right.
You catch the band. They have fallen asleep, like going through some cornfield or something, and so the van was left on all night. Then they're trying to then they go and siphon two of the members, Pat and Sam, which is Anton Yelchin and Aaliyah Shawkat, go on a bicycle to go siphon some gas, like steal gas from random car in a parking lot far away. So I like that it gets right into the band story, and you just kind of pick it. You kind of pick up the details as you go along as you're moving. But yeah, then at a certain point, it like you said, it could almost start dragging, but then you launch into this, nightmare that they walk into by heading into this kids, cousins, friends, bar where they can play a show. I mean, he kind of warns them and says, the politics of these people is so far right that it's like far left almost, or something like that. And Aaliyah Shawkat, Sam, she says to him, she's like, they're not like burning crosses, right? Which is like, you can see that their youth is like kind of like, you know, it's their Achilles heel, because really, if someone's telling you that the politics of a place or of the people who are going to essentially hire you to play at their club are sketchy at best and horrendous at, you know, at reality, you should probably say no, you know.
Right.
But they're so desperate to like not have their tour end on this down note that they agreed to go to this place where there's a bunch of skinheads. And I mean, you know, they play it off like, oh, you know, we're not afraid of skins. Like we played clubs where there's skins before. And I know that the punk rock scene in some areas, you know, there was a crossover between the punk rock scene, the hardcore scene, and the skinhead scene, which, you know, is also involves neo-Nazis. But I just think that was a moment, it was so fast, but that was a moment where they should have said, nope, not doing it, thanks anyway, bye, you know.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. Otherwise we would have no movie. And I just remember thinking like, okay, here it comes. Like as soon as you see where they're going, it looks terrible. If you like, I got that. Listen, as a person of color, nothing scares me more than being in some sort of remote rural place with a bunch of angry looking white people. It scares me, especially when it's mostly men, you know. And that's that scene, you know. So they go to this place, and my stomach drops as soon as they, you know, as soon as they get in there. I'm like, oh my God, I would want to run away. I would just want to run away and get in the car and like just step on the gas. But all of them are white, so I guess they really didn't really care. I don't know if it's like I also thought maybe it's kind of like a punk rock bravado, again, because they're young and they think like, oh, no big, like we'll just play. And they even play, the first song they decide to play is Nazi Punks, which is a cover of a Dead Kennedys song. Mm-hmm. And they know that these people are Nazis, and they do that to like antagonize them. And, you know, again, youthful bravado, you know. And I don't know, I just so it's kind of like, and I think all of those things, for me anyway, it didn't make me like the band any less at all. I just think that like it was just sort of like, you know, you see them kind of making these choices and you don't feel like they deserve what happens to them at all. At least I didn't. But also it's sort of this all around feeling of like, what did we get ourselves into? Like even among the group of people, the neo-Nazis, and they're like Patrick Stewart and the other guy, what's his name? I think Gabe is like, the like, you know, I don't know. I think he's just an employee, but he seemed like he was the manager of the club.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even as Gabe and a bunch of the younger concert goers who are also apparently like friends, like skinheads who are friends of the, you know, the owner and of the club. Even for some of them, it seems like they're kind of like, what's happening here? Like this is going so fast. But as you said, you know, once Pat sees the dead body in the green room, it's all over. Like then everything gets put into motion and all the wheels start turning, and then that's where all of the action starts, you know. And that's just, but the director does it in such a way that you feel like how it would happen if it happened in real life.
Right.
Where it's like just a moment and you're like, whoops, no. And like, you kind of like, no, I'm leaving. Like you said, like the guy's like, oh, no, I didn't see anything, bye. And then they're like, oh, no. And Patrick Stewart, when he talks to him, what's his name? His name's Darcy.
Darcy.
Darcy, yeah. They own Patrick Stewart's character in the movie is named Darcy. He owns the club and he's the leader of all the skinheads. just says, like, he keeps saying something like, no, it's all right, it's all right, it's okay. Like at every turn, he's like, no, 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 it's okay, to the band. They communicating through this door, through the, because they don't want to leave the room because they feel that they might get killed, and he wants them to turn in to give over the gun, and he knows he's going to have them killed, but he keeps talking to them in this calm manner and just reassuring them that everything's fine, it's okay, they're in a bad situation, but they can fix it, if they just listen to him and do what he says. It's just, I thought it was good. I felt like by the end of it, and I agree with you, I really liked the ending. I felt as if I had just read a short story, like seen like the visual, like it's like a visual short story, which is, I don't know, to its credit, because it does take like a story that, that could if in the wrong hands with actors that weren't skilled, could be just a corny movie, because the concept could go either way. But because the actors are good and the director was good, I think it's worth recommending. It's super violent, as you mentioned. Yes. I'll just mention it a third or fourth or fifth time. It's super, super violent. It's super gory. That kind of stuff just doesn't bother me. I get more freaked out by the quiet moments. So for instance, I don't want to give anything away since we're keeping it sort of like spoiler free, but this is a little bit of a spoiler. So if you want to, click pause, hold on, or skip forward a few seconds. There's a scene where they see like sort of like a bunch of dead bodies laying one next to the other, and it's a quiet scene, and that was much harder for me to see, because I wanted to believe that those characters somehow were still alive, or we're gonna be alive.
Yeah.
And
that scene that you're talking about is really disturbing.
Yeah, and I remember just like just laying in like broad daylight, one next to the other, next to the other, next to the other, and I was like, oh my God, like that really happened. And like and in the same scene, you see two of the characters who are still alive, and they play it so well. These two actors are excellent. They play like, like they're completely traumatized, terrorized, and terrified all at the same time, and one of them is just looking at the bodies, and it's just like, you can just tell that person's thinking like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't believe this has ended up this way. And it's horrible. That by far bothered me a lot more than the super violence that's going throughout the whole movie. So I think that it was just a wee bit violent, but if you can handle that, then definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, you brought it up a little bit. You brought it up a little bit earlier, but Darcy, Patrick Stewart's character, his calmness throughout the movie is probably one of the most terrifying things in the movie.
Yeah, it was so much so that I almost, like, I kind of had this feeling throughout the second half, the latter part of the movie, that I missed something almost, or that we were going to get more information about the background of the group, because he seemed so calm, like he had done, and he kept making references to other times or other people that they had done this kind of a thing. So, I was just waiting to hear more about what it was that they'd done. But you're given pieces throughout the movie of the extraneous activities that this group is involved with besides the club, the drugs, for instance. So, I mean, the pieces are all there for you to pick up. But yeah, the way that he was so calm, his demeanor is very scary in the movie.
Yeah.
It's part of that quiet, like it's part of that quiet feeling of terror. Like, you don't need people to be menacing, coming at you like menacingly. Just their presence and the fact that they're quiet, like, alerts you to the fact that you probably shouldn't be there.
Right.
And Patrick
Absolutely
Stewart,
right.
yeah, Patrick Stewart's character, good call. His whole way of being is kind of like, I'll be polite, but you really, really shouldn't be here, and you should
Yeah.
probably get the heck out of here right now. And that's something that the kids in Ain't Right didn't really understand. I mean, he wasn't there from the beginning, but something that they didn't really understand from just their immediate surroundings and the people there.
Yeah. So, were there things that you didn't like about the movie? Maybe one or two things that you were like, I wish this was a little bit different.
Yes, what I was just describing in terms of like feeling like, okay, when is the whole big explanation of when is that coming? I felt like I was waiting for an explanation or for some more exposition on the neo-Nazi club, and that didn't really happen. Like, I kind of kept waiting for there to be some scene where they're talking and Patrick Stewart like really identifies who he is and what his role is and how he's, how he's been guiding this group to, like, be the drug pins of, backwoods Oregon, and he's not going to let these young punks from the East Coast muck it up, something like that.
Right. Right.
But that doesn't happen. So that kind of bothered me. And I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's just a personal taste thing. I don't always need things to be spoon fed to me in my movies, but there were just too many sort of like innuendo filled in performances that I felt like, okay, when's it coming? Like, when are we going to find out more about Imogen Poots' character, about who she is? What's her name? Amber.
Amber.
When are we going to find out more about Amber? Like, who her and Emily were to each other. Emily is the other female skinhead whose body Anton Yelchin, Pat, discovers, and what kicks off the whole movie. Her death kicks off the whole movie, the plot of the whole movie. But I kind of kept waiting to hear more about her, and we don't. And I mean, but those things kind of bothered me, but it also lends the movie at the end to feel like, okay, this was just a short story, and I love short stories. So it didn't bother me so much that I would say, like, I'm gonna give it one thumb down and one thumb up because of that. No, I would have liked to hear a little bit more, a little bit more background on everybody. But as you said, the pace of the movie was such that you don't really have time for that. At a certain point, it just gets right into it and moves right along. So,
Right.
What about you? Is there something that you did not like about the movie?
I didn't like how short it was. I think it was like an hour and 30 something minutes.
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half
And
or something.
yeah, and I think, kind of what you said, I think some more backstory on Darcy would have been really good, and would have extended a little bit of the runtime for the movie. I just feel like his demeanor just called for us to know more about him, and maybe some of the appeal is that, hey, this is, you don't need to know any more about him. He's just a creepy dude who is just really calm when it comes to hurting other people, and maybe that's fine. But I really wish it would have gone on just a little bit longer, because I would like to have seen his character explain a little bit more. again with Amber, Imogene Poot's character. And I felt like, I don't know why I get this sense, but I felt like Pat had this whole other thing going on with him as to why. I mean, he really stands out as like a really nice guy. So I really wanted to know a little bit more about him in terms of, you know, how he differs from the rest of the band. So, you know, so that honestly, that's really all I can say in terms of a negative, because overall I thought it was a great film.
Agreed. I agree with you on those points. Totally. I thought it was interesting. I found out that Anton Yelchin and Aaliyah Shawkat, who play Pat and Sam respectively, they're in the band Ain't Rights. They're actually playing and singing for real when they have their little moment on stage at the club. That's actually them playing and singing.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in a punk band at one point, and I don't know if she was ever in a band, but she's played like musicians playing musical instruments in other movies before. So,
Right.
yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And we haven't mentioned yet that Anton Yelchin actually, as most of you would know him from various other movies, including Star Trek. I think it's probably what he was best known for. Passed away just a few months after this movie was released. This movie was released in April of 2016, and he died in June of 2016. He was only 27. And the version that I saw, which was streaming on Netflix, has the movie dedicated to him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was, you know, released before he passed away, they managed to get those titles into the movie afterwards. So I thought that was really sweet that they had it dedicated to him.
Yeah, and it's such a shame too, because he was such a great actor, and
Yeah, I thought the
yeah.
same. I thought the same thing. You know, I thought he was really excellent in this movie. I had only ever seen him in Star Trek, which I thought he was really good in, but I thought he was excellent in this movie. You know, I mean, we don't know him personally, so we can't say. We heard he was a nice guy, but as an actor, as you know, it's a very big loss.
Yeah.
So here we are, all these years later, still saying what a loss it was
Yeah.
for everybody. So, Jeff, are you ready to rate this little green room nugget?
Yes. Yes, I am. I'm ready to rate it for sure.
Okay, so for
Um,
all of you who are listening to us for the first time, Jeff and I have a rating system, whereas we rate a movie based on headstones. We use headstones, and we have a mini question that we ask also at the end of at the end of the rating process. So Jeff, I'll let you give your rating first.
okay, so my rating for Green Room is going to be a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 headstones.
Oh wow.
Um, I Yeah, I mean I struggled with it. I mean I thought at one point, you know, 3.5, but I really just like the movie. I really like it, and really like the performances by all of the actors and actresses. And yeah, I'm at a 4 out of 5. What about you?
I'm in the same boat that you're in. I'm not totally decided. 3.5 or 4 headstones. I like the movie. I think it was good on lots of levels. Cinematography, the direction, the acting, everything I thought was good. I guess I'll give it a 4 headstones out of 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that also.
All right.
So my next question is, would you get this movie tattooed on your arm?
As much as I liked it, I don't know. I go back and forth. Um, I'm going to say no. And the reason why I say no is while it was a great film for me, I guess my bar set way too high with Saw. So like I think, it's a great movie, but I don't know that I would get a tattoo. Partly because I don't even know what I would get from this movie other than like a guitar or something,
Right.
generic. So what about you?
No, I would not get a tattoo of this movie. There are lots of little elements of this movie visually. The trees, the Northwest has a lot of beautiful trees
Yeah.
and pretty scenery, but it's associated with neo-Nazis, so we
Yeah.
just can't go there,
Being people of color, that would be
That'd be weird,
that's
right?
that'd be weird. I will say this though, when you talk about the scenery and the landscape, at the end of the movie, when Gabe kind of walks through the forest and he gets to where he's trying to go, and
Mhm.
you see the trees, but then you see the mountains covered with snow in the background.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was like visually one of the best scenes I've seen in quite some time.
I would probably agree with you, but at that point I think my mouth was hanging open, my jaw was dropped, and I was so like, what
Yeah.
is going on? And God help us. So
Yeah.
I think the only thing I realized was that that's the only time in the movie that we see any people of color, which
Right.
is probably like a metric that we should probably start going on. Like we should probably come up, you know what I mean? Like, does it bother us? Maybe we have just a couple of minutes to discuss this. Like, does it bother us as people of color that there are zero people of color in this movie? Does it make sense for the movie? Was there wiggle room for that? Was that an aspect that we should have been exploring? What do you think about that?
I definitely think that the movie with the subject matter does not need people of color, because what would have happened if people of color were in the movie is we know that either they would be um, they'd have someone talking down to them. There might be some type of violence that we don't need to see associated with that. Um, and I really didn't see any other elements of the movie where I felt like a person of color would fit in. I just thought it was kind of ironic at the end of the movie that when Gabe is walking through the woods and he sees those people there, that's who he's looking for to rescue him. Given given the fact of all the crap that he's done and been associated with, when it comes time for him needing help, that's he sees people of color, and that's who may or may not be his saving grace. What about you?
I agree with you mostly. I feel like, yeah, if like what you said, basically, like if we were to have um anyone of color in the picture, it just would have been redundant, almost like we already know what we would have expected. You're just
Mhm.
setting up something obvious, like, to have, a Latin person or an Asian person or a black person walk in with the band into a neo-Nazi club, would have just been like, okay, we already know what's coming. And also that probably would have hindered the movies, like the movie, because people would have been like, well, why on earth would that person ever agree to go to a club that
Yes.
could have skinheads, so I don't want to say would have like messed with the plausibility of the plot, because there's lots of things that people could argue about that anyway, but it could have been one more thing to detract from it.
Right.
On the other hand, like, what are we, by using skinheads, right, as the villains, and Patrick Stewart's role, as the lead villain, as the lead skinhead, what are we saying though? Like, because you can't use Nazis, you can't use neo-Nazis in any sort of like, literature, film, song, whatever, without you're bringing up race, right?
Right.
So what are you saying? I mean, I agree with you. I liked that the last people that the last people in the movie, so to speak, are a group of, immigrant workers that Gabe goes to ask for help to call the police, to get rescued by, because I like to imagine, this group of hardworking Latin people working up in Oregon, just trying to like make ends meet and dealing, what were they were, it looked like they were like dealing with produce, like on the side of the road. And just like trying to eke out a living, and then this like crazy-eyed white boy comes to ask them for help, and like meanwhile it's like they're probably just like, what the hell, excuse my language, is going on? All these crazy white people done with each other, and we're just here like, just sorting out some produce, trying to like make a living and make it happen. Like, I kind of like what that says. Like that whole like bunch of crazy white people kind of a trope, I don't think the movie was really going for that, but being not white, I couldn't help but think that myself. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, but then again, the director is a white male, so we're, going by what his vision was. I don't know. I kind of think of it as dual, like it's a missed opportunity, but would it have been redundant? I don't know.
No, I see your point. I really do. I think that, like you said, it would have possibly given people more ammunition to try and poke holes through the plot. But at the same time, I feel like the movie was so heavy that, and this is just me just kind of spitballing this idea, but what would have been really funny is a person of color being in the band, and then they get this information from this guy, like, hey, you've got this, you can go and do, I think his name was Tad. Like, hey, there's this gig, my cousin is up at this place, and, but they're neo-Nazis. And then the person of color is like, you know what? You guys can do that crap. I'm not, I'm out. We'll meet back up in DC. And kind of give it a little bit of a little bit of comic relief there, to add a little more realism to it if you did have a person of color in the film, because that would be my reaction. Like, there's no way I am going to step foot anywhere near that type of environment, because I know what that means for me. So you guys can handle that. I'm out.
Yeah, I like that idea actually, because it's like you said, it kind of lends a funniness to it, and then it deals with him or her sort of having their glasses on about this whole thing, and not just being like, we can handle it, it's fine, like the rest of the band does. Well, maybe that's a privilege, then that's like a privileged position you can have, when you're white. When you're young and white in a punk rock band, you don't really have to think about those things. And then it would also lend like some, I don't know, just an interesting like thing in the background to know that, you know, wow, like when everything unfolds as it does, the person that went back home is going to hear about all of it and probably be super grateful that they didn't stay and go on to this club. That could be an interesting angle. We'll never know, sadly, because
Yeah.
Jeff, you were not one of the screenwriters for this movie. I like that idea. You know?
I feel like more horror movies should do that because
Oh, sure.
I think sometimes it's a missed opportunity for me because I mean, I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but there's not enough opportunities for people of color in movies, and a lot of times horror movies. And and if there are people of color in the movies, I mean, it's essentially one of two roles most times. So I just feel like having that role in a movie would be it adds some comic relief, but it would also add a level of reality there. Like I don't get to operate in the same space that you do,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel like more people need to be aware of that. And if you don't mind, can I share a brief personal story about this very thing?
Of course.
Okay. So I'm not going to give away a lot of details in terms of names and all of that stuff, but let's just say that I was asked to go to an event, and and I live in the South, in South Carolina, and I was asked to go to an event, and my question to the person that asked me to go to the event was, did you tell the people running the event that I'm going to come to the event? And they said to me, well, yeah, I told them. I said, I don't think you really understand. The event that I'm going to is not necessarily an event that I would be invited to
Yeah.
if I weren't in the space that I'm in. So did you tell them that I,
Mm-hmm.
almost 6'4", big black guy, did you tell them that I will be at this event? And when I explained it that way, the person says, well, I didn't even really think of it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I know it's 2020. However, these are things that you have to think about because everywhere that you're welcome, it's not the same for me.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes movies and short stories don't tell that side of things, and everyone wants to believe, it's 2020 and everybody, there's no such thing as racism in 2020. And yeah, if you believe that, I have oceanfront property for you in Nebraska. I mean, yeah, it's, yeah, don't even get me started with that. Um, but yeah, I want to make sure that real stories are being told. And to be honest with you, and I know I'm like going off on a tangent here, I apologize,
You
but
don't apologize.
that was one of the brilliant things about Get Out, is that it took that subject and it put it out on Front Street.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no choice. If you were watching the movie, you had no choice but to be confronted with that. And I feel like a lot of times movies just miss out on telling real stories like that because, I mean, can you imagine me writing a story about me going to this event and I'm the only person of color there. And the moment that I walked in, everyone had that real slow turn and just looked at the door, and there I was. And that is terrifying in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't think people fully understand that. So maybe I should just write that. Maybe I should just write a story and
I'll read
include
it.
some of that stuff in it. That
Absolutely, you could. You know
that's
what?
what I'm gonna do.
Absolutely, we need to bring more of our stories and experiences and put them out there. You
Yes.
know, and I don't know. It's like it doesn't matter to me at this point and at this day and age that they should be like, oh, well, was it published in the New Yorker, or was it published in the Paris Review, or was it, things. It doesn't even matter. Just publish them, like, put them on Instagram, put a link like to your
Right.
blog. Who cares? You know what I mean? But
Right.
we all just need to like remind each other that we're out there, because anytime I've read real experiences of other women, any color, and also specifically of any women of color, their experiences when they mirror mine is such a validation.
Right.
And I wouldn't know I wouldn't know that there are other women going through similar things to me if they didn't decide to write it down in any format and just put it out there for people to pick up on. I think that's important. And I agree with you about Jordan Peele. I don't care how many times it's been said. I don't care how many articles have been written. And I don't care how many times he's been interviewed. He did something with that movie, and that's the reason why people, kept echoing it in articles and in reviews and in interviews and stuff, because that movie really shook something up. That movie did something for a lot of people. It gave visibility to a freaking whole lot of people. I'm Latin, I'm not Black, but that movie, like, made me feel like, like something was happening that, included me instead of feeling excluded, and Jordan Peele definitely was a huge part of me coming to horror as a genre that I could really appreciate. He's very. I think his work is very important, and
I agree.
and so I agree with you. And just I think the fact also that he's like not like he's not our age, but he's not like that much older. You know what I mean? Like I kind of feel like he's like in our age group. And so I feel like he understands things. But anyway, I'm totally with you on that. And I guess for another maybe at another point, you and I can chat about like how Green Room, how it mixes into all of that a little bit more, even more so than we're getting like down on record today. But yeah, I'm glad this movie Green Room definitely brought up quite a few things. I'll always wonder what the background story is with Imogen Poots' character Amber. I'll always wonder what she was doing at the club that day with Emily. How close were they? And just all of that. I'll always wonder about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and next week, if all goes well, then we will have our good friend Cinepeg on the cast with us. And should we announce what movie we'll be chatting about with her?
Yeah,
Maybe
let's do it.
Let our friends, give them a chance to watch it.
Yes.
We're gonna have our dear friend Cinepeg, Peggy, on the podcast with us, talking all things Rosemary's Baby, starring Mia Farrow and directed by that hideous creature, Roman Polanski, and that's something that we'll, get into. The three of us will talk about that
Yes.
too. So, but in terms of the genre, it is one of the masterpieces, I think, of cinema, period. Never mind just horror. I think it is a masterpiece. Yeah. So we really hope that you guys will join us next Friday for that episode, which is going to be a lot of fun.
I cannot wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. She's a cool lady, that's Cinepeg. Very talented. And she knows her stuff. Oh my goodness. She is other than you, she is my other touchstone in terms of horror movies. Peggy knows her stuff. We cannot get anything past her.
Yeah.
She's a little encyclopedia. Awesome. So yeah. So thank you guys for joining us this week. We are happy to announce that we are now on Apple Podcasts. So now you can just search us up on your iPhones and iPads. Look up Movies to Be Murdered By. We will pop up there. If you would do us a favor and subscribe, give us a good rating, write us a review if you're in the mood. That would be awesome. It helps
that
us.
Would be.
Yeah, it helps us out tremendously. So thank you all for joining us this week. We hope you're all staying safe and keeping your social distance, please. Wear your masks. And
wash your hands.
Don't pick your nose. All you kids out there that are probably not listening to this because you're too little, don't pick your nose. And yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.